My wife accused me of ruining her best friendship until she admitted they've been planning a secret getaway together. I was the one who made the joke that lit the fuse. Backyard lights strung above our little deck, a bowl of burned corn on the cob smoking in the corner because I forgot it, and me with a beer and a mouth that ran ahead of my brain. You two should get a couple's discount, I said to Lara and Oksana as they rearranged the charcuterie like it was a magazine shoot. You're joined at the hip anyway. It was supposed to be teasing. It landed like glass. Oksana gave that little smirk that makes her seem above it all. Lara's shoulders went rigid. The air thinned. Our friends kept laughing, but Lara's laugh was hollow and short, and when she looked at me, I felt something close. When the last guest left, when the deck was sticky with spilled sangria and sugar ants had started their crusade, Lara set the wooden board in the sink a little too hard. Do you ever hear yourself? She asked quietly, not looking up. Do you ever realize how you sound? I was just controlling, she said. Like always. You ruin everything with this commentary. You ruined my friendship with her. The word ruin hit me harder than it should have. It was so total. I made a dumb joke, I said. I'll text her an apology. She snapped off the faucet and turned, wet hands dripping. Number, you'll do nothing. You've been suffocating me for months, and now you're trying with Oksana. It's not enough to watch me. You have to watch who I'm with. Suffocating, I said. I could hear myself getting defensive. Hated that I couldn't stop. Because I asked where you were when you stopped sharing your location last week? Because I noticed our joint card paid for a yoga thing in June I've never heard of? She laughed once, humorless. See? Data points. Logs. You reduce life to screenshots. Because the screenshots don't lie, I said, and immediately wanted to take the words back. She didn't reply. She dried her hands and took her phone face down off the counter. That was the first night she slept with her phone under the pillow. The glow of the screen caught the underside of her cheekbone at 2 a.m. when I rolled over. I watched, felt ashamed of watching, pretended to sleep. In the morning, she was gentler, a kiss on my temple, a sorry for the tone. I made coffee and tried to package the night into a box labeled, stupid argument, fragile, ignore. When I reached for my mug, her Apple Watch lit up on the counter with a name, then went black. Oksana. A little red heart. A voice memo icon. You know I love that you have friends, I said finally, sounding like I was reading from a worksheet in therapy. I don't want to be that husband. I just felt ganged up on last night. I crossed a line. You think everything is a line, she said, but softer. Apology accepted. For a few days we coasted. She worked late, or said she did. She turned off location sharing because the battery drains and you know it. Our joint card pinged for groceries, an Uber to a street I didn't recognize, a small payment to a platform I'd never heard of that turned out, when I looked, to be a booking service. I didn't bring it up. I wanted to be a better man than my suspicions. I clung to small evidence of normal. Her keys in the dish, the laundry folded neatly with my socks paired, a note in my lunch. Eat your vegetables, gremlin. Then Sunday, the Airbnb charge. Not a hold, an actual debit. The memo line said, Sea Salt Hideaway, which sounded like a candle. 2 weeks starting mid-September. I sat on the closed toilet lid and stared at the bank app, willing it to become a glitch. 2 guests, no names, paid with our joint card. My chest did the slow kettle boil of anger and fear. I told myself it could be a mistake, a mishap, a gift for us I'd ruined by asking. I told myself to breathe. That afternoon we went to Lyra's mother for borscht and unsolicited opinions. Helena believed a husband should provide and keep quiet. Women need their girlfriends, she said, stabbing a slice of garlic salad with a fork, or else men swallow them whole. She smiled at me like I was the ocean. Max, don't make drama. Pay your bills and give her space. On the way home, Lara put on a playlist and hummed and touched my knee at red lights, like the conversation had never happened. I wanted to believe the world was this soft. I almost did. But the playlist stopped midway because her phone vibrated, and she turned its screen down, and the screen still flashed the sender across the top. Oksana, with a little lock icon next to her name, like a secret. When we parked, she stayed in the car to finish the message. I carried the groceries upstairs alone. Monday, I put my phone on the bookshelf with the camera toward the kitchen. Not to catch her, I told myself, but to catch us. To prove to me that I was imagining it. She came home at 9, hair smelling like the honey shampoo Oksana uses, the scent that clung to our jackets after girls' nights. She microwaved soup. She leaned on the island and recorded a voice memo, with her phone close to her mouth. The audio on my camera picked up almost nothing. Just the hiss of the microwave, and a few hushed syllables, until she laughed too loudly and said, No, he thinks I'm at work again, then lowered her voice. Later, she turned the faucet full blast and spoke into the noise. I lay in the bedroom and listened to water like thunder. I confronted her with nothing that night. I tried to hold my face in a shape that wouldn't escalate. I failed at small talk. She eyed me like I was a puzzle she regretted buying, Wednesday, I accepted a late beer with Dennis, Oksana's on and off boyfriend, who was always around their circle like a planet caught in an orbit it hated. He was the kind of guy who wore cologne like a weapon and had opinions about macros and never paid for the second round. He called Oksana my girl and said it in a way that stamped a flag. We sat in a noisy bar where the lights were too bright for secrets. He got sloppy faster than usual. "You and Lara okay?" he said, leaning too close. "Oksana says you're being—" "Spreadsheet." "Spreadsheet?" I said. "You know." He made a gesture of pinching and zooming in the air. "Checking. Counting. You IT guys. You make life into numbers and then wonder why it doesn't love you back." He laughed, then knocked his glass with his knuckle. "They're doing this business thing," he added. "Like slipping me a rumor would make us comrades. Retreats, women empowerment, whatever." I told her. "Not with my money. She thinks she can run off and build a cult." "Business thing?" I tried to keep my voice even. He smirked. "Let's see them fly without passports." Then he realized what he'd said and recovered badly. I mean, they plan. They dream. You know how girls are. I walked home in air that felt heavier than weather. The apartment smelled like toast and chamomile tea. Lara had a blanket on her shoulders and a stack of sticky notes open on the coffee table. When she saw me, her face went neutral fast, as if she'd rehearsed it. We did the slow choreography of couples being gentle. "How was your day? I missed you. We should try the new place on Friday." She stretched and the blanket fell and I saw a key envelope tucked under a magazine, thin and white, like the kind Airbnb hosts leave at kiosks. My stomach went cold. That night, I rehearsed sentences. "I love you, but I'm scared. I trust you, but this feels off. I want to support your friendships, but not in the dark." In the morning, I tried them, clumsy and earnest over eggs. She listened with her eyes on her phone. When I mentioned the Airbnb, she looked up finally and poured her coffee slowly as if calibrating. "It's a retreat," she said carefully. 2 weeks. For women. Oksana's organizing. I'm going to help. I was going to surprise you. "With our joint card?" I asked. She held my gaze. "It's my money too." "Of course," I said. And the room was suddenly very quiet. "I just want to understand. Why the secrecy? Why the changes?" Her face shifted through a handful of expressions and settled on injury. "Because you turn everything into an interrogation. Because you don't hear me unless there's a receipt attached. I'm trying to hear you now." "Then hear this," she said, voice wobbling but firm. "You made me feel small in front of my best friend. You keep tabs on me like I'm a teenager. You are ruining the one relationship that makes me feel like myself. If I didn't hide things, I'd have nothing of my own left." I swallowed. The words were sharp, but beneath them was a quiver. I reached for her hand. She didn't move it, but she didn't pull away. "I don't want to take anything from you," I said. "I want to know you. I want to stop being scared." She took a breath like she'd been underwater. "Then stop counting," she said. "Stop auditing my life." She left for work, and her location dot went gray by the time I finished my coffee. I stared at the key envelope until the letters blurred. Around noon, a notification slid onto my screen. "Your Uber trip has ended." It wasn't mine. The receipt auto-forwarded from the joint account. The drop-off was a street by the river, the same one as Monday. I tapped the map and zoomed and saw a cluster of warehouses, a co-working space, and a storefront with a sea salt name that was not a candle. I told myself I trusted her. I left my phone face down and tried to work. At 3, my phone lit by itself on the desk. A voice memo, routing through our home assistant because I hadn't toggled off cast last night. Oksana's voice, bright and conspiratorial, leaked in at low volume, just enough to catch a sentence before it cut. "We leave at night. The keys are in the envelope. Don't tell him till we're gone." Then the audio died, and the room went very, very still. The words hung in my apartment long after the audio cut out. "We leave at night. The keys are in the envelope. Don't tell him till we're gone." I sat at my desk with my fingers hovering over the keyboard, no idea what I'd been planning to type. My first instinct was to replay it. But the home assistant had already cycled back to idle mode, and the memo wasn't saved anywhere on my phone. It was like the sentence had slipped in through a crack in reality just for me to hear once. I felt my pulse in my neck. I paced the apartment, telling myself there had to be some innocent version. Maybe they were talking about Dennis. Maybe keys meant car keys for some last-minute drive to a spa. But the envelope in the living room wasn't metaphorical. It was real. I pulled it out from under the magazine and saw 2 silver keys on a ring and a folded paper with a 6-digit code written in thick marker. I put it back exactly as I found it and sat on the couch staring at it like it might move. When Lara came home that night, she was bright, almost giddy. She kissed me on the cheek like we hadn't been in a slow-motion Cold War all week. "I'm starving. Let's order Thai," she said, scrolling through her phone before I could answer. Over curry, I tried to ask about her day. She gave vague answers, the kind where she mentions meetings, but can't quite say with who. She laughed at a text mid-bite. I asked, "Oksana, without meaning to. She nodded without looking up. Later, while she was in the shower, I pulled her coat from the closet and checked the pockets. My hands shook when I found a printed ferry itinerary. 2 passengers, early morning departure from the city pier to an island I'd never heard of. No names on the booking, just a QR code and Sea Salt Hideaway printed in bold at the top. I was halfway to taking a picture when the shower shut off. I shoved it back in the pocket and went to the kitchen, pretending to scroll my phone. She came out in an oversized t-shirt, towel around her hair, and smiled like I was the safe place she wanted to come back to. It made the guilt of checking her things stick in my throat. The next day, I texted Ilya at work. Need your help with something off the record. He was the kind of guy who could recover deleted files from a toaster. He didn't ask why, just sent me a shrug emoji and a time to meet. At lunch, we sat in a cramped server room while he hooked my phone to his laptop. You've got about a dozen partial audio caches, he said. Some from your home assistant. Might take a while to stitch. While he worked, I told him the outline. Not the marriage details. Just that I thought someone was hiding something that could cost me money. He raised an eyebrow but didn't comment. When the recovered file played, the voice was Lara's. It was clearer than I'd hoped and worse than I wanted. And once we're in, we change the code so he can't get in. The deposit should hit your account before we leave. You said the van's booked? Oksana's voice. Yeah. Midnight pickup. He won't even know we're gone until he wakes up. The file ended with both of them laughing. The kind of laugh I used to hear when she was on the phone with me. Ilya leaned back. Well, that's not subtle. My mind raced. Was this about me? Our apartment? Our accounts? Or were they talking about Dennis? Was I a target or collateral damage in whatever mess they'd gotten into? That night, I tried again to talk to her, but she sidestepped every opening. She told me about a funny thing a barista said, about a podcast episode she liked, about how I should try a different laundry detergent. When I finally said, I found the ferry ticket, her expression flickered, but she recovered. It's for the retreat, she said. Oksana booked it on my behalf. You're reading into everything like you always do. And the keys? The code? Her voice sharpened. You're going through my things now? I didn't deny it. We stood there in the kitchen. 2 people who used to tell each other everything. Now just defending territory. Lara, I said quietly, if this is just a trip, why does it sound like you're sneaking out? She stared at me, jaw tight, eyes glossy. For a second, I thought she'd break. Instead, she turned away, grabbing her bag. I can't do this right now, she said, and the door clicked behind her before I could reply. I sat at the table with the leftover curry and the hum of the fridge, replaying every detail. Her tone, her timing, the way her hands shook just slightly when I said the word sneaking. I knew one thing. If I waited until that ferry left, I'd be finding out everything too late. I didn't sleep that night. I lay there staring at the dim outline of the ceiling fan, listening for the sound of her key in the lock. When she finally came in, sometime past 2, she moved quietly, but not quietly enough for someone who thought I was asleep. A drawer slid open, the rustle of fabric, the click of her phone camera, like she was photographing something in the half-dark. I kept my breathing even until the mattress dipped. She lay on her side, facing away from me, scrolling her phone for another 15 minutes before the glow finally died. By morning, she was in work mode, hair tied back, blazer on, speaking quickly about a meeting she couldn't be late for. She kissed me on the cheek without meeting my eyes. Her perfume lingered in the kitchen long after the door shut. I pulled my laptop closer and opened the joint account again. Overnight, there'd been a new charge. Rideshare to the same riverfront district as before, drop-off at 12:43 a.m. This time, I cross-referenced the street on Google Maps, the co-working space, the Sea Salt Hideaway sign visible in one blurry street view image, not just some hypothetical Airbnb. This place existed, and it was exactly where they'd been going. The paranoia wasn't just in my head anymore. It had coordinates. I called Dennis. I didn't plan to, but my fingers moved before I could think better of it. He answered with the bored tone of someone expecting a spam call. Yeah? I need to know what you meant about the passports, I said without preamble. A pause, then a low chuckle. That got under your skin, huh? Dennis. He sighed. Look, man, I don't know all the details. I just know Oksana's been squirreling away cash. Says she's starting fresh. I told her over my dead body. Maybe your wife's going along for the ride. Maybe she's just helping. Either way, it's stupid. That place isn't what they think it is. What place? He hesitated, then said, Sea Salt. It's run by some wannabe guru. They call it a retreat, but it's basically a commune. People drop everything to live intentionally. And then, poof, they're cut off from everyone who could talk them out of it. The line crackled. Oksana says I'm controlling, he added. Maybe she's right, but she's not thinking straight. And neither is your wife if she's signing on to this. I hung up with a knot in my stomach. Commune. Cut off. Keys. Codes. Midnight departures. The picture forming in my head didn't look like self-care. It looked like disappearance. I texted Ilya, need to meet again tonight. Urgent. The day crawled by. I couldn't focus on work. Every email blurred. Every Slack ping sounded like a warning bell. By the time I met Ilya at a corner table in a quiet cafe, I was running on caffeine and dread. Got something else for you, he said, sliding a small USB across the table. Pulled more from the cache. This one's longer. I plugged it into my laptop with hands that didn't feel steady. The recording started mid-sentence, Lara's voice. He won't know the difference until it's done. The deposit's already split. You'll have your half by Friday, Oksana. And your stuff? Clothes? Documents? I'll take the basics. The rest I don't care about. Once we change the code, it's over. They laughed again, softer this time, like they were picturing. I stopped the file halfway through. My ears were hot. That's not just a trip, I said. Ilya nodded. Whatever this is, it's organized. And they don't want you involved. Walking home, I tried to map my options. I could confront her now, demand the truth before it went any further. But if she was already committed to this cult, commune, whatever it was, she might just vanish faster. If Dennis was right and these places thrived on cutting people off, then once she was inside, it'd be 10 times harder to reach her. When I stepped into the apartment, she was on the couch with her laptop, looking up ferry schedules. She didn't hide it. She just minimized the window when she saw me. Hey, she said lightly. I was thinking we could do something this weekend. Just us. It almost made me laugh. Just us. I sat down across from her. Where were you last night? Her eyes narrowed. At work. At 12:43 a.m.? In the Riverfront District? The silence between us was thick. She closed her laptop slowly, deliberately. I'm not doing this with you right now. You're leaving, I said. It wasn't a question. She stood, slinging her bag over her shoulder. Maybe I am. Maybe I need to. The door shut. And I realized my hands were clenched so tight my nails had left crescents in my palms. Whatever I was going to do, I had less than 2 weeks to do it. 2 days passed without her spending a night at home. She claimed she was crashing at Oksana's after late work, which sounded less like an explanation and more like a placeholder meant to stop questions. Each time she texted, the messages were clipped. Long day, don't wait up. No calls, no photos, just enough to prove she was alive. I stopped telling myself this was about trust. We were far past that. This was triage. By Thursday, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for her to walk out with a suitcase in the middle of the night. If she thought she was protecting Oksana from Dennis, fine. But she was dragging me into something that smelled like both financial and emotional suicide. And if this sea salt hideaway really was a commune, disappearing act, or worse, then once she stepped onto that ferry, she'd be out of reach. That afternoon, I called Dennis again. He answered on the second ring, sounding suspicious already. I'm not here to fight with you, I said. I think they're leaving together. Midnight van, ferry, codes changed. Does that sound right? A pause. Yeah, he said finally. And if they do, it's done. You won't see her unless she wants you to. And she won't. So what's your plan? My plan is to make sure Oksana never gets on that ferry, he said flatly. If I have to block the road myself, I will. That's not a plan, I said. That's a scene from a bad cop show. We sat in a heavy silence. Then he added, if you want them both to come back in one piece, you'd better find a way to make them stop without making them run faster. That night, Lara finally came home. She walked in like she owned the place. Hair curled, expensive-looking coat I hadn't seen before, perfume thick in the air. I asked where she'd been. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, fingers laced like she was bracing for impact. You already know, she said. So let's stop pretending. I let her talk. She told me about the retreat in vague, sweeping language. A reset, a break from the noise, 2 weeks of intentional living by the sea. Oksana had been there once before, came back glowing. They'd been planning it for months. She'd been afraid to tell me because, in her words, I wouldn't understand. And the midnight departure? I asked. The keys? The code change? Her jaw tightened. That's not about you. Then who's it about? She hesitated, then leaned in. Dennis? He's not safe. Oksana needs to get away without him knowing where she's gone. The keys are to a friend's place where we'll stay until the ferry. The code is for the alarm so she can get her stuff out without him showing up. It was almost believable. Almost. But the memory of that recovered audio, her voice promising to change our code, laughing about how I wouldn't know until it was done, gnawed at me. So you're risking our finances to fund her escape? She doesn't have the money, Lara said, voice rising. I do. It's my account too, Max. I'm helping my best friend start over. Sorry if that doesn't fit your definition of acceptable. And if she's not just starting over, if she's pulling you into something worse? She laughed. Sharp, brittle. You sound like Dennis, paranoid, controlling. Something in me snapped. I sound like someone who's been lied to for weeks, who's watching his wife disappear right in front of him. Her face flushed, eyes glassy. You don't get it. You've never trusted me enough to let me make my own choices. Trust goes both ways, I said. We stared at each other for a long time. Then she stood, grabbed her bag and said, "I'm staying at Oksana's until we leave. You can stew in your spreadsheets." The door slammed. I sat there for a while, the apartment feeling too big, too quiet. Then I pulled out my phone and texted Ilya. "I need you to help me set a trap." If Lara wouldn't tell me the truth, I was going to make sure the truth showed up in front of her, with witnesses, and before she could vanish. Ilya didn't even blink when I laid it out for him over coffee the next morning. "They think they're walking into a clean getaway," I said. "I want them walking into a room they can't lie their way out of." He sipped his espresso. "So, what, an intervention?" "Something like that. But with receipts." We sketched it out in half an hour. I'd already frozen half of our joint funds by moving them into a separate account in my name. The other half would stay untouched. No sudden moves to tip her off. Ilya would set up a live audio feed from my phone to his laptop so he could record whatever conversation went down. I'd bring in a lawyer friend of his, someone willing to be present under the guise of protecting financial interests. And Dennis, well, Dennis could be bait. It felt dirty involving him, but if Lara was telling the truth about him being dangerous, then better he be in front of witnesses when this ended than lurking in the shadows afterward. I called him that afternoon. "Meet me at the ferry terminal the night they leave. You'll get your say, but you don't go near them until I tell you." He grumbled, but agreed. 2 days before their departure, I sat alone in the apartment, staring at the key envelope again. I almost confronted her. One last shot at stopping it quietly, but I knew if I did, she'd vanish sooner. And then I'd be the one chasing shadows. The night of, Ilya texted me. The setup was ready. My phone would record from my pocket. I wore a mic clipped under my jacket as backup. The lawyer, Miriam, met me outside the terminal. "You're sure this is wise?" she asked, adjusting her glasses. "No," I admitted. "But it's necessary." We waited near the ticketing area, the midnight van drop-off spot just down the curb. The air smelled like salt and diesel. Ferry workers moved carts of supplies up the ramp. At 11:52 p.m., the van pulled up. Oksana stepped out first, hair in a sleek braid, duffel over her shoulder. Lara followed, wearing the same coat from the night she came home glowing, her suitcase trailing behind her. They were laughing about something when they saw me. The laughter died. "What are you doing here?" Lara's voice was sharp, but her eyes darted to Miriam, then to Dennis, who'd stepped into view from the shadows. "I'm here to stop you from making the worst mistake of your life," I said. "And to make sure you don't take me down with you." Oksana rolled her eyes. "Oh, please," Miriam spoke up, professional and calm. "I'm here as legal counsel for Mr. K. We have serious concerns about joint financial accounts being used for activities that could be construed as fraudulent." Lyra's face went pale. "You brought a lawyer? You brought secrecy," I said. "This is me catching up." Dennis took a step forward, jaw tight. "You think you're walking onto that ferry? You're out of your mind." Oksana turned on him, eyes blazing. "You don't own me. This is why I'm leaving." The argument erupted fast. Oksana and Dennis trading accusations. Lara shouting at me that I'd humiliated her. And then, right in the middle of it, I played the recovered audio from my phone. Her voice filled the air. "Once we're in, we change the code so he can't get in. The deposit should hit your account before we leave." The silence afterward was sharp enough to cut. "That's not about him," I said quietly. "That's about me." Lara looked like she might deny it, but something in her posture shifted, like a string had been cut. She glanced at Oksana, then back at me. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, voice small. "So tell me what it was supposed to be," I said. And right there, with the ferry horn in the distance, she did. Her words came haltingly at first, like she was afraid the air might snap them in half. "It started about 3 months ago," she said, eyes flicking between me, Oksana, and the ground. "Oksana told me she was done with Dennis. Said she'd found this place, sea salt, that could give her a clean break. No forwarding address, no calls, nothing. A reset. She begged me to come with her for the first couple of weeks so she wouldn't chicken out. I waited, but she didn't meet my eyes." "And the money?" I asked. She swallowed. "She didn't have enough to cover it. You thought you'd just pull from our joint account without a word," I said. Her voice cracked. "I thought you'd never let me help her if I asked. You've hated her for years." "I've distrusted her," I said. "Turns out I was right." Oksana stepped in, her tone sharp. "You don't know anything about me." "Dennis, this isn't about me anymore," Dennis cut her off. "You can paint me however you want, but you were about to run off with his wife, drain their account, and vanish into some cult." "It's not a cult," Oksana snapped, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. Miriam, cool and clinical, asked, "Ms. K, were you aware that some of the funds you withdrew are traceable to a joint asset that requires dual consent for expenditures over a certain amount?" Lara blinked. "No, I didn't know that." "That's because she didn't care," I said. She flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's not fair. I cared, She broke off, pressing her palms to her eyes. I got caught up in her story. She made it sound like, if I didn't go, I'd be letting her walk into something dangerous alone. I looked at Oksana. "And were you?" Her jaw worked. "Maybe. I don't know. But I needed out. She was the only one who ever had my back. That's not the same as dragging her into your mess, I said. The fairy horn sounded again, closer this time. People were lining up to board. Oksana turned toward the ramp like she could still make it. Dennis moved to block her path. Don't, he said, voice low but carrying. She hesitated, and in that hesitation something in Lara seemed to crumble. She looked back at me, really looked this time. I can't go, she whispered. Oksana spun on her. What? Number, we're doing this. I'm not, Lara said, firmer now. Not like this. Not with his money. Not with lies. Oksana's face hardened. Then you're choosing him over me. I'm choosing not to torch my life, Lara said. Oksana stared at her for a long, unreadable second, then turned and stalked toward the ferry line alone. Dennis didn't follow. He just stood there, breathing hard, until she was swallowed by the crowd. The four of us left. Me, Lara, Dennis, Miriam, stood in the chill air under the harsh terminal lights. Finally, Miriam cleared her throat. I think that's our answer, she said, tucking her folder under her arm. Lara didn't speak until we were walking back to the car. I'm sorry, she said quietly. Not just for the money, for all of it. I thought I was doing something good. I thought I was helping. But I was just running away from how bad things have gotten between us. I gripped the steering wheel, eyes on the road. This doesn't go back to normal because you said sorry. The accounts stay separate. The codes stay the same. And if we're going to try to fix this, it's with a therapist in the room. Non-negotiable. She nodded, staring out the window. A month later, Oksana was back in the city. Her sea salt reset cut short after a week. Dennis had a restraining order against him for installing spyware on her phone. Lara was going to therapy, alone and with me. We were still in the same apartment, but the air between us was different. Not warm, not cold, careful. Sometimes I caught her looking at me like she was measuring the weight of all the trust she'd burned, wondering if it could ever be rebuilt. I didn't have the answer. All I knew was that for now, she was still here. And for the first time in weeks, so was I.